Well, who doesn't enjoy a good vegan meal? But I'm afraid you may have to start calling it different things. Meat-like terms on vegan products is being banned. I'll give you an example. Vegan or veggie biltong, mushroom biltong, plant-based meatballs, vegan nuggets can't be used anymore. It's a little unfair, it sounds like. Let's find out why. Billy Makafola, Director of Food Safety and Quality Assurance at the Agriculture Department, joining us now to talk about this. Billy, good morning to you. Why are we picking on vegans and vegetarians?
Good morning, Gareth, and thanks very much for having me. Look, we're not necessarily picking up on vegan or plant-based product. What we are doing is that we are trying to have a situation where the playing field is sort of leveled. We are not saying that they should not actually sell the meat analogs as it were, but the problem is kicks in the minute you piggyback on established names that were used for processed meat products. That is where the problem is. Otherwise, what we are saying is that label them accordingly, but do not necessarily use names that are exclusively prescribed for processed meat product.
Okay, so what would we call Billy? What would we call a vegan nugget? A vegan piece of something? Give me an idea. What would someone who runs a vegan company call a vegan nugget? Looks like a nugget, tastes like a nugget, but it's not a nugget. What do I call it?
Yeah. That's where the problem is. They have to come up with their own names that will certainly resonate with plant-based product, not necessarily use the existing names that are prescribed for processed meat product, because in that way you're creating an impression in the mind of a national customer or client that it could actually be a product that is necessarily processed meat product. So in order to clear that problem that could actually arise, specifically on the side of consumers in terms of misleading product, you need to have a specific names designed and actually used for plant-based products. So there's a clear delineation. But at the same time, it is not necessarily fair for traders to have a situation where they compete for names that are traditionally used for processed meat product, then actually being used by plant-based product. Of course, as agriculture, we support both vegan and processed meat product because they are all coming from agricultural products. The other one is from plant, the other one is from animal. But the fact of it is that the labeling has to be correct.
I'm a meat eater. I am. I enjoy a good steak and a burger. I probably overcook it, but I do enjoy red meat. I certainly do. I thought the clear indicator would have been the name vegan or vegetarian on the labeling. I can assure you I've never mixed that up in my life.
Yes, of course. I mean, that is why we are saying that, okay, for meat analogs, they're not necessarily regulated as such, but the labeling and how they come up with names for products that you want to sell in competition with existing meat, processed meat product, they should actually come up with names that will distinctively be for those vegan products. So we are not necessarily saying that you should not necessarily sell them, but what we say is that please have a clearer way of actually calling those products by their real names rather than using traditional names that are associated with processed products.
How many complaints have you really gotten about this? Billy, help me understand. How many complaints have you really gotten about this? Where did this problem really start? How big was the issue really to have to change all this?
Look, the actual change came about in 2019 when the conceptual regulation was actually gazetted. We gazetted the regulations for processed meat product, and from there on, it was then very clear that there are certain names which will actually be exclusively used for processed meat products, and any other person who actually uses those names will then be such a product will then be subjected or inspected against the existing standards for processed meat product. So that's where the problem is. So it actually stretches as far back as 2019 when the processed meat product was promulgated. And from there on, we actually gave the industry something like six months. We delayed the implementation of the regulation by 6 months. We should actually say that when the regulation was first enforced, there were other things that were looked at. And it is becoming clearer. And where people will actually complain that, look, there is no definitive line drawn between processed meat product and vegan product, in the sense that names that are exclusively for processed meat product are actually used to advance and sell those
I can
meat
understand, Billy, and I can understand and accept, and I'm sure many people will agree if we have something called vegan meatballs. The word meat is in there. I suppose you could look at that and go, that could be a little confusing if you don't read the label properly. But surely the meat industry, and I mean the processed meat, actual meat industry, cannot have carte blanche on words like nugget and kebab. You could have a vegan kebab, it could have nothing on but vegetables. Surely they can't stop other companies using the word nuggets and kebabs.
But the fact of the matter is that in the mind of let's talk about a national customer, any other person who knows biltong, what would they actually associate biltong with?
Yeah.
They would actually associate biltong with meat.
Sure.
So if you are coming up with, it may actually taste and look like a biltong, but if it is not necessarily derived from a meat, it is actually a problem. And that actually is misleading in terms of Section 6 of the very same Act, in the sense that you are giving an impression that the kind of product that you are actually selling, which actually uses those names that are exclusively prescribed for processed meat product, it's what is not. So that is the actual problem that we have, that, well, it could be that there are discerning customers who would actually read and go beyond that. But those people who just actually look and say, this is biltong, the first thing that I want to do is that they're buying biltong, only for them to realize later on that, look, this is a product that is necessarily plant-based. It's not necessarily meat as we would associate the name with. So that is the problem. But at the same time, at the core of this thing, that the regulation has actually set out those names that may be used or should actually be used for processed meat product. So any other person who actually uses those names actually calls for that product to be inspected against the standard that has been set out in the said regulation, so that you actually authenticate that indeed what has actually been claimed falls within the purview of the same regulation. That's the problem.
And where does someone watching right now, Billy, where does someone right now find that list? Because it is confusing. I'm struggling to follow it as well. I mean, you make a good point with the biltong. That I'll accept. I get that one. Where would one find this list? Someone runs a vegan food store or a vegan shop or a vegetarian restaurant. Where can they get the name? Because this is going to get messy, isn't it? Where can they go get the details?
The names, I think they are in the regulation that can actually be found on the departmental website. But of course, they can actually access those names from the national department through our offices. We can make that list available to all of them. But I think those people who are in this industry, who have actually been consulted on this very regulation, they know those names that are exclusively used for processed meat product, and that those kind of names should actually not necessarily be invoked in any sale of plant-based product.
I appreciate your time. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how this is going to be handled. It seems like a small issue, but I suppose it's quite a big thing when it comes to food. But Billy, thank you very much indeed. Billy Makafola, the Director of Food Safety and Quality Assurance at the Agriculture Department. I'm curious, can someone tweet me at Gareth Edwards SA? If it's not a vegan nugget, what would you call it? What else do you call a nugget if not a nugget? What else do you call plant-based meatballs? Plant-based balls? I don't know. Tweet me at Gareth Edwards SA. I'm curious to hear from vegetarians and vegans. I have no idea what you'd call it. You tell me. Maybe we can pass it on some good ideas. All right.